All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Yes and podcast brought to you by AR Plus, Action Research Plus. Really excited to be here today to record this episode of Yes and. I'm with two of my very favorite colleagues, Lady Munoz and Leiva. We're both based in Bogota, in Colombia. Full disclosure, this is a project that I am currently working on and have helped to design. So that's part of the reason that I'm excited about it. Is just I'm knowledgeable about it, but I'm also really delighted to be able to bring these two folks with us today to share their journey that they've been on around participatory action research as a peace building tool. So I'll just give them each an opportunity to briefly introduce themselves before we dive into the details of this project. Laura, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure, thanks, Skip. Um, Hi, so my name is Laura Leiva. I'm a program specialist for the United States Institute of Peace, and I've been working in youth programming for over 7 years now.
Excellent. How about you, lady?
Hola, mi nombre es Leidy Munoz.
Hello, I'm Lady
Estoy
Munoz.
trabajando en Somos Capaces
I've been working at
aproximadamente
Somos
4 años.
Capaces for 2 years.
Trabaja en
This
temas
is an
de educación
NGO
para la
that
paz.
works with education for
Mi rol
peace.
como coordinadora de
And
acción
my role is
para
an
la paz
education
en
coordinator, creating
diferentes
peace
poblaciones.
building programs for different types of populations. Thank you.
Excellent. And so just as a bit of a background and to lead into our conversation today is most of you know, I work with AR Plus on youth issues and participatory action research. And so about 9 years ago, the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is a U.S. government agency that was founded in the 1980s, which focuses on peace building programs internationally, they reached out to me with a desire to start bringing participatory approaches into their peace building work. And so I have been a technical advisor to them since around 2016, helping them to bring participatory research, participatory methods into their different programs. And so, in particular, we have focused on working with some of their youth cadres of youth peace builders in different countries. In 2016, 2017, we led a 2 year process in Kenya, in three different cities in Kenya: Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa, which ended up being very much a prototype for the work that we're currently doing in Colombia. And I'll share some links in the description of the page today with the links from some videos and some outputs from that project. But we learned a lot in that project. The Kenyan facilitators that we trained in that process have been very much involved in this project as well. And then starting last year in 2023, we began a 2 year project working with youth peace builders in Colombia, working with 19 different youth peace builders across 8 different departments or states in Colombia. And we're about halfway through the project now. So there's another year to go. It was basically built as a capacity building process. And so it comes in two different phases. In the first phase, the first year, which we just completed, was built around kind of all of these youth peace builders carrying out a coordinated, unified piece of research. They all came together over various workshops and decided on a particular project, particular research question they wanted to work on. And across their 8 different states, they coordinated and built a research that they all were contributing to together. And they produced a singular output from that research over the course of a year, which we just shared last month. And then in part two, they're going to shift from a role of being a researcher to being a research facilitator. So all the stages of the research they're going to go through again this time, but they're actually going to be working in a distributed way. Each person is going to stay in their community and they're going to convene a group of 15 youth from their community, and they will facilitate a process in which those local youth will be the folks who are the researchers. They will be deciding what the research focus is. And our 19 young people from the first year, they will be facilitating the process and guiding the process. So it's a layered process of learning: first year to act as a researcher, and the second year to act as a research facilitator. So we're hoping that that two-layer process will really help all the folks who are fellows in this program really be able to own this work afterward, and be able to carry it forward into their organizations and communities in the years to come. USIP is not dictating what the focus of the research is. We're just here to offer the capacity building, and the folks on the ground are the ones who are determining what this is used for and what they're focusing on during the project, which I think is a pretty rare structure. So really been great to be able to have that flexibility. So I appreciate the U.S. State Department, which is helping to fund this project through USIP, and for their support, and to acknowledge them. And so just to give you a little bit of context about where we are, because we'll be getting into some more details as we go. But I've talked a lot about the project itself. Maybe not all of you are that familiar with Colombia. It is a country that has been through a lot of recent conflict. There was a peace accord that was signed in 2016, and the country is still very much in the process of demobilization of rebel groups and trying to implement a very complex peace accord. So that's where I want to start with that as a question for you, Leidy, to maybe give us a little bit of context setting for people who are not that familiar with what's happening in Colombia. Where are we in this process? Where is the country in terms of moving forward after the peace accords? What problems are persisting, and what new problems have emerged, in the aftermath of the conflict?
Sí, y efectivamente en Colombia
Yes,
se firmó un
indeed.
acuerdo de paz en el 2016.
The peace accords were
Ha pasado varios
signed
años
in
y
2016. It's been a
también
long time since,
pasado en Colombia que hubo un
and
cambio de gobierno.
there
Entonces,
was a change in
el pasado
administration
gobierno
in Colombia. So
gobierno, el
the peace accords have
anterior
gone
presidente
through
Duque y el gobierno
two
actual del
administrations, the
presidente
Duque
Petro.
administration and the
Ese
Petro
acuerdo de paz
administration.
tiene seis
So
puntos
the peace accords have six items that are very
pero
important for
tenemos
Colombia,
desafíos
but
realmente
they've
grandes
faced very
todos
serious
porque
challenges for
se tiene que
everyone as a society,
garantizar que el
not
gobierno sea
just
quien garantice
for
la
the
ejecución
government
de
to
estos acuerdos
guarantee
y
the
también
fulfillment
tiene que
of these
garantizar
accords, but it's also a challenge for
porque a
society,
pesar de un conflicto
since
armado
going from an
entre
armed conflict
estas
to
personas, de estos
the
hombres, mujeres que viven
reincorporation
aquí,
into society
nosotros
of
como
these men and
ciudadanos
women
también empezamos a generar nuevas
entails
formas de relacionar.
us
Entonces también tenemos que
creating new
reconstruir
ways to
relaciones.
relate, to connect
Ahí
with
tenemos
others.
también un
So that's a
desafío
challenge
porque
for
en esta
society. There's
institución
also a challenge
judicial
for the judicial
especializada para
system,
paz,
how to
se tuvo que
create a
reconstruir
special
porque
system
también
for
necesitaba
justice for
adaptarse
peace. We
a
had
una
to
realidad.
create that from
Y
scratch in
también las
order
personas
to bring
que
these
decidieron
accords into reality. And
participar
also the men and
en
women who
las
decided to sign these accords and to
se
take the
enfrentaron
path
a
into
una
peace,
nueva dinámica
they are
social
facing a new
durante
social
años
dynamic because
en la selva
they lived in the jungle
vivían
for
en este grupo
10
armado
to 15
unas formas
years
de convivir, unos
in a
ejemplos
community that has a
unos ejemplos
doctrine,
que tienen que ver
some
con la
ways of
identidad y
living,
el
and some
mito.
values, a
Y salir
worldview
de
that's
ese
special and
a la
specific.
sociedad
And coming out of that
tiene
into
desafíos
society
de cómo
entails a
puedo
challenge.
reincorporarme, cómo puedo
How can I be reinserted into
estudiar el
society?
gobierno
How can I be
de alguna
part of the
forma
society
apreciar
and to feel
ese
appreciated?
desafío, porque yo sé que
That's
son personas
where the challenge lies,
también
because
con
these are
unos
people
derechos de
who
entrar a una
have the
educación, entrar a
right
alguna institución
to
nacional
receive
de educación,
education because maybe they did
entrar
not have
a
that
ver su vida,
before.
porque estuvieron en un
They have
lugar,
the
en
right
unas familias
to land because
en los
they
ejércitos
have a
paramilitares
household, they have
durante
families
muchísimo
they
tiempo y
built
todas las destruidas
within
familias.
the armed groups, or maybe they
Entonces,
didn't have
es un
that before and they're
desafío
building that
porque nos
now. And
enfrentamos
there are
en este
several challenges
momento
that we
a
are
que
facing right now
pues
at
las
this
FARC
point of the accords.
dejaron también
The
muchos espacios
FARC
vacíos
guerrilla
para
have
otros grupos armados
surrendered their arms, and
presentes en estos
thus
espacios
they have
políticos.
left an
Y
empty
cuando
space
se
for
habla de
other armed
reparaciones, creo
groups
que
that
ahora
have
el
wanted to come
acuerdo
into
está
these spaces.
dándole
And that
un
has
brillo
brought
a los procesos de
a
paz,
new wave of
al espacio
violence.
que tienen estos grupos
So
a
now
mostrar que ellos
there's the
quieren
presence of these new groups who want to
recorrer
take
ese
over
territorio
power
y
and the
después de este
territory.
conflicto volverlo a
And
retomar
these
como
spaces
objetivo
for
para ellos y seguir
conflict
generando más
are a
conflictos
way
en
for
esta
them to gain
propia
power.
zona
And
territorial.
it's generating once again all the conflicts we are facing in Colombia. These are the challenges we are facing at the moment. Some progress has been made, but some steps back. Also, there's some regression because of these new groups that are coming into the landscape of the armed conflict.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Lady. And I would say probably about 2/3 of our 19 participants are coming from rural communities in the rural parts of the country, which were some of the most heavily affected by the conflict, and are in this process, which Lady describes, which they're still in pretty precarious situations because it's still not a calm or secure situation now. There's these armed groups which are basically controlling those areas, so it's still a very complex and delicate situation. And even for the folks in the major cities like Bogota, like yourself, there's still huge impacts from all the migration from the rural areas, people coming into the city from these areas, which are destabilized. So there remains nobody in the country who is still not who's unaffected by the continuing impacts of the conflict and then the peace which has come after, which is still forming. Um, Lara, maybe you could give us a little bit more context as well. We're kind of setting the scene with Colombia, but we also want to talk a little bit about USIP and kind of how USIP plays a role here in terms of their youth programming. So, can you just say a little bit about USIP's work with youth and also how it nests within the wider youth peace and security agenda, which has been established by the United Nations?
Yes, so maybe I'll begin a little bit talking about the YPS agenda. So in 2015, the UN Security Council adopted the resolution 2250, which basically places youth at the center of policies on peace and security, and that's what we call the YPS agenda, which seeks to change that narrative that puts young people as either victims or perpetrators of violent conflict, and rather it puts them on a focus on the important role that youth have in promoting peace globally and within their communities. So USIP has been actively implementing the YPS agenda in its programming, and also by participating in policy discussions and supporting youth-led initiatives in conflict-affected communities. I would like to highlight one of the key programs for this is the Generation Change Fellows Program, which partners with youth leaders across the world to foster collaboration and to strengthen their capacities to continue to have these active roles within their communities. So this is a little bit of what USIP is doing with the YPS agenda.
Yeah, so many of the folks in this program have been through multiple processes with USIP, including the Generation Change program, where they've had multiple opportunities to train and learn different skills, and also a youth um, advocacy council that works in different departments where they have been given trainings in mediation and different sort of dialogue skills. And so these are all kind of layered processes that we have brought people into. And so we see PAR as kind of a different emanation, a different level of training that builds on previous skills where folks are able to continue to work in their communities and bring these skills to bear on the challenges that their communities face. And so, Lady, just kind of in that space, now that we've kind of set the scene around the work. Let's just talk about the project and talk about you and your experience with the project because that's what we're here to hear about. But what for you, what attracted you to this project when you saw the call for this? Why did it appeal to you? And specifically, what challenges that your community is facing did you hope that this might equip you to be able to address?
Sí, algo que me interesó demasiado cuando vi el programa
Something that really attracted me to the participatory action research program was the fact that this was something that we hadn't used in the organization. This is an organization that is working on education for peace, and we didn't have that in our toolkit. And USIP has been working on action for us to continue on the path toward peace. And we saw that this is a tool that will enable us to keep working for peace. So if we can master it, then it will be highly useful. As a social organization, we often face challenges. We tend to have advocacy in the territories based on our skewed view and not from the point of view of the needs of the community or with their participation. So this is a reflection that we've had with these educational programs that are generally focused on urban areas, but when we move into rural areas, there is no conducting thread for their needs. So that's what brought me to it. We want to be more consistent with what we want to do, and PAR provided us with the different tools to be able to work hand in hand with communities.
Excellent. Thank you. Question for you, Laura. There is no small irony that me as a practitioner in the United States is coming to Colombia to lead a program in participatory action research, because those of you, as many people listening to this broadcast will know, a lot of the original conceptual work around participatory action research is coming out of Colombia. And so or has these roots there in Colombia. So, can you talk a little bit about what those origins are and how we have aimed to bring them into this program with that history and that legacy?
Yes, of course. So the work of sociologist Orlando Falls Borda, who is from Colombia in the 70s, was super important to shape how we see participatory action research today and the approach it has in social sciences, sorry. In the 1970s, he started working with farmer communities and grassroots social movements, and that's how PAR began in Colombia. So we have really wanted to honor this deep roots that PAR has in our country, to include them throughout the project and to make sure that youth know that this comes from our country, because many of us have probably used methods and methodologies that come from PAR, but not really understanding where it comes from. So one of the first things we have done was share a book that talks about like the legacy of Falls Borda, that's called Cowards Don't Make History by Joan Rappaport, and it examines the development of PAR in the Caribbean coast. And additionally to this, we also invited some Colombian organizations that currently use PAR methodologies in their research and their work to share their experiences with our participants and to share how PAR has influenced their work in the local organizations. So we wanted to really honor the work that all of these organizations have done in Colombia throughout these years, and also create a network. So once maybe the program finishes, our youth participants can continue to work with these organizations that know and use PAR throughout their work.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think for us, this is really about the work that our participants will do afterward. You know, this is really just preparation. This isn't really the most important part. We're just sort of getting people ready to do the work that's really important. So I think being able to establish those local networks and is really important. And I think that's one of the great, interesting, and valuable things about PAR is it does tend to create other organizations that exist for many, many years. The same thing has happened in Appalachia with some of the first PAR work that happened in the 1970s. And in Eastern Tennessee and Eastern Kentucky, there continue to be organizations which grew out of that work, which are still influential and doing really powerful work, you know, 4 decades later. And the same in Colombia, which I think is just a testament to the sort of grassroots value that communities see in this kind of approach. So really great to be able to sort of see the similarities in Colombia and be able to connect our researchers with these organizations and current work that's going on. Question for you, Leidy. Can you just talk a little bit, like I said at the beginning of the hour, we're kind of halfway through the process. We're kind of at this inflection point between the first year and the second year. And can you just share a little bit about this first round of research that you completed over the last year of the project? You know, what did your team end up deciding to research about, and how did you arrive at that particular topic and focus?
Sí, tuvimos varios encuentros con mis
We
compañeros.
had several encounters with my colleagues. It was a joy for me to see them because we got to see the reality of people living in Choco, Caquetá, and other regions where I'm not present. And we started off talking about the problems faced by young people. And these dialogues brought to light several commonalities. Young people tend not to find many opportunities in terms of jobs and education and entrepreneurship. So these young people were forced to migrate into larger cities where people think they will find these opportunities, but there's a challenge there because there's a larger population there, there's more young people there. So access has a limit over there. And there is fierce competition to gain access to education and jobs. So we felt identified with this problem because as young peace builders, we know that gaining access to higher education is hard. We know that generating resources from organizations is a complex process. We need to hold processes away from our places of origin. So we agreed on a question that speaks to the relationship between internal youth migration and social investment in Colombia, because there are administrations that could make promises, but they minimize migration because young people can achieve their dreams at becoming professionals, but how does that happen? So we wanted to see what was the relationship between this and social investment. And we were happy with the question because it reflected the situations we wanted to research at that moment.
Yes, and you all did a fantastic job. Just hold it up here. Maybe we can put in the links for the program today. But this is the report that you all produced, and we just had a launch event in Bogota last month, and it was very well received. And true to form, the event that you all designed for the launch was an incredibly participatory process. You not only explained how you developed the report, but then you invited all of the participants, the attendees in the event, to come and offer feedback to all of your recommendations that came from the report. You had kind of a World Cafe process, and you walked everybody through different stations related to the different findings in the report, and asked for their feedback on how that we could make it stronger. And really also asked for them to partner with you all to make sure that these recommendations get implemented. So I think it was a real kind of sea change for how people talk about research. You all weren't the experts. You all were really kind of the conductors to say, look, we have to do this together. We have brought all this knowledge from the rural areas. We brought this knowledge from these young people in the urban communities here. Let's work on these issues together. Because like you said, sometimes those voices really get overlooked. And I think you all really offered a real bridge to bring some of the NGOs and governmental actors into dialogue with the folks who are really experiencing these issues directly. And migration is such a huge challenge for Colombia, not just the internal displacement that you've spoken about, which we focused on, but more than 20 million Venezuelans who are also currently displaced because of the instability in their country, who are also living on the Colombian side of the border, which also adds to the stress on the system and the burden on the cities and the competition that you spoke to in terms of how challenging it is to be an immigrant or a migrant within the country right now. It's just a very difficult situation. So I think it was really a valuable piece of research, which is going to be meaningful to so many people, and brought out so much passion for the people who contributed to the research at all the different communities. So I think it was a really powerful experience in that piece. So I just want to talk about that. So we kind of gotten through this first year. So just looking back and reflecting on that, what did each of you find? This is a question for both of you. What did you find to be most valuable in this process? Laura, as a project facilitator, what was most new and different for you about guiding a project like this? And, Lady, for you, what did you find valuable about your role as a co-researcher in learning this methodology for the first time? And so, Lara, I'll let you just jump in first, and then Lady.
Yeah, I think something that was very new about this project has been a little bit about letting go. I think as Lady mentioned earlier, normally projects guide the themes that should be researched or have like an idea of what should be done. And this time around, it has been completely up to the youth researchers that we worked with. So as Lady just explained, it was them that came up with the research question, and they really led the whole process. So this has been very new. I think it has been in occasions difficult, but also gratifying and interesting to see how they have managed to carry out this research by themselves. And we have been serving to support them and guide them as needed, but it's been really, truly a process that's about them. So I think that's probably the newest thing that has been sometimes challenging, but also very gratifying to see.
How about for you, Lady?
Sí, yo quiero decir que la metodología me
The
encantó.
methodology is something I really loved. Sometimes you think you're going to be trained theoretically and you're going to be listening to facilitators and they have the power and over the project, and you are a passive agent receiving and absorbing all of this information, and you will put it into practice someday. No, here we were trained in a very complete manner, but the challenge was when I became an active agent. I had to think about the question. I had to go gather information, data. I had to analyze the data, and I had to submit this report. And I was like, what did I get myself into? Because I'm used to being so passive in these processes. But it's been very gratifying for me for us to come out of these trainings and to utilize these skills right off the bat, because thanks to this process, I became more self-confident. I connected more with the people in my community. I have this outcome, which is my first research. I held a national event with my other 19 colleagues. It's a lot of so, uh, it's a lot of success, and more success is coming because we will be training young people now. So these are more victories and also more challenges than expected. So the entire process has been very gratifying for me.
Well, just tell me a little bit more about that. Like going out into the community, what for you, you are a community practitioner, you're used to being in community, but when you're starting to approach it with this different methodology, what for you was the most memorable moment of practicing PAR in the community? What was your fear when you first stepped out to do this? And then what do you feel like was the moment of success where you realized that this was going to be a useful and functional tool for the work that you wanted to do?
Sí, yo trabajo en programas que
I work
ya están prediseñados. Entonces, hay un
pre-designed
siempre como una
programs.
manera como
So my relationship with the
un
community
objetivo
was
claro y definido.
usually having a
Con la
clear
investigación
goal set
participativa era
and just pursuing it.
llegar a la
With
persona comunitaria,
PAR,
a los
it
actores
was
y
more
decirles,
about approaching the
bueno, mira,
community and the
necesitamos
stakeholders and asking them
participación en
to
ustedes.
have a
Entonces,
dialogue
cambió
with their own
como
perceptions.
ponernos como
And
en un
that
lugar
brought about a change in
de vamos a
dynamics
construir,
because
vamos a colaborar,
we came
la
into
investigación de
this
todos, no era
point of
solo
view
de
of
Leiva
building
y
all
todos hicimos
together.
como
It's
su
not
parte.
just Lady knowing what to do. She knows where
Entonces la
we're
comunidad
all
se sintió
going, but
integrada,
rather
se
all
sintió
of us building together.
escuchada,
The community felt
se pudo ver
heard.
diferentes
They
como lo que había
felt
pasado
It was something different that had never happened before. And they felt they were a community. They felt they could move together toward a common goal, which was understanding how migration was elapsing in my community and how social investment was related to this. So that was the distinction. They felt they were part of the research and they felt the data they had and their opinions was highly valuable to all of the process.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Another piece I would just want to touch on, and I think in my mind, this is a piece that we're really going to be looking at in depth this year and really thinking about it with the different communities and the youth that you'll be working with. But we're in this particular context of Colombia because of the peace building and post conflict sort of situation and then the stage of implementing the peace accords. But for those of for you two that have been thinking and working in this space in Colombia, which you both know so well, at this point in the process, how do you each understand PAR as a peace building tool? I think we're trying to bring together some different kinds of concepts and practices that sometimes people don't necessarily see them fitting together, but we think that they do, and we're trying to work out how that is and how we talk about it. But how do you understand PAR as a peace building approach? As a conceptual thought, and also as something that's practical that communities can apply and make a difference with. Um, Either of you, whoever wants to jump in first, but I'd love to hear from both of you.
Okay, maybe I can start. I think I see two big ways that PAR can really be used as a peace building tool. The first one is about giving power to the community, especially communities that have been affected by violence for so long, usually don't have a voice or are afraid of using their voices. So making them see that they have the knowledge, that they can create approaches and solutions for a problem that is affecting them. I think that's a big piece about the peace building aspect of PAR. And the second one, I think, is the creation of spaces where dialogue can take place with different stakeholders that would usually not come together or that have like conflictive relationships. So towards the end of the research, we create spaces where the youth present their findings and recommendations to the local community and invite all of the different stakeholders that participated throughout the process. And this space, I think, helps them create a community that maybe sometimes can be fragmented. So I think those are the two aspects I see of PAR and peace building.
Sí, yo agregaría uno más y
I would
es
add one more aspect. It also somehow enables us to recover the memory of the community, the individual stories of each person, which are usually lost because we tend to think that there's a single history and not several histories. That's something that I was able to recover in this exercise. I learned about new and different ways of perceiving my territory, which is called Swacha. So I was able to recover the memories that are reflected on the research, and that created a sense of appropriation. In our interaction for research, we created connections and a relationship where we felt more love for the places we belong to and more empathy toward the people we're hearing, to walk on their shoes. And from there, we start building what we have, what we are, and the place where we are. So it's useful to recover a memory. It's useful to bring a sense of ownership with our space. And that in turn creates peace because when we listen to other people and we find that there are commonalities as well as different stories, we ultimately belong to the same space and we all want to be well because this is a community. That's what I would like to add.
Very, very, very nicely said, and really powerful too, because that idea of recovery is also one which really draws really strongly from the work of Falls Board as well, which is very intrinsic to the work that Laraska and his teams did. So this real sense of people having to be able to recover their own story amongst themselves first, to be able to then put it out into the policy spaces and bring it to other levels in the process. But yeah, I think that remains an incredibly important piece of what this work does, and great that you were able to promote that in your communities and the other researchers this year as well. Want to change gears a little bit because we're going to be thinking a lot more this coming year about that question of how we articulate the peace building dimensions of this work. But one of the things that I think I'm most proud of is really the new things that are happening in this project that I really give credit to Laura, also Tonas Montes, who's another colleague at USIP, of just really making the space much more inclusive and being really thoughtful about how we do that for the people who are researchers who are part of our team. So just for you, Laura, this, when we started reaching out to different folks from the Generation Change Fellows Program, from the Youth Council Program, we had a couple of applicants who were mothers with really young children, under the age of 2, and we wanted to accommodate them. So we didn't want to say, look, you've got a nursing baby, we can't fly you across the country, you can't be in a workshop for 5 days. So we wanted to figure this out. So how do we accommodate those really important applicants, and how do you think that's actually pretty congruent with the participatory approach?
Well, the very nature of PAR is participation, and I think participation should include everyone. And usually mothers and young mothers are not able to participate in many spaces because they tend to carry those responsibilities of being the main caretaker of their children. So for us, it was really important to make sure that mothers could participate in this project fully. And this meant that we would invite them to come along with another caretaker for them to be able to attend the training in all presence. So what we did was actually ask them who they wanted to bring rather than us hiring someone. And this meant that many times they brought like family members that supported them. And it also made it easier for their children because they were familiar with those people that were going to take care of them. And I think this allowed our participants to be fully present within the workshop and be able to feel comfortable that their children were safe and that they could have like the complete experience as the rest of the participants without any challenges. So I think that was our main target, and our main focus was for them to be able to participate fully as everyone else.
Excellent. And Lady, you are one of those young moms who this program really, we were going to figure out how to make it possible for you to be with us one way or another. So um, how is that support that Laura is talking about? What difference did that make for you in the project this year?
Sí, yo estoy como muy agradecida.
I'm really
Siempre
thankful.
en todos los encuentros he dado las gracias y
I've
creo que este es un buen momento
always
ya para agradecer
thanked USIP, and I
Laura
want
y
to
Tony que
thank
tengan este
Laura
enfoque de
and
género y
Tonis
siempre las
for
mujeres
having
están
this
teniendo
gender-based
pues a
approach
cargo
throughout the
muchos
project,
procesos en
because
función de esto,
we've
pero
always
también está
had children under our care.
importancia que queremos
We
como
have nursing
visibilizar y como
babies,
seguir promoviendo la
and for
lactancia
example, in my
para que
case, I want
cuando
to
me dijeron
promote
que podía llevar a mi
breastfeeding.
bebé,
And when I
yo
found
dije
out
pues
that
no,
I
no lo
could
sé,
take
es
my baby
necesidad,
with
pues
me,
ahora no
when I
como
started,
otro alimento, solo puedo
my
solamente
child
arroz.
was 6 months
Podía
old
llevarla,
and
pero
she could
no
only
podía lactar.
breastfeed. She couldn't
Siempre
eat
se
anything
necesita un
else.
cuidador porque a
And
veces
I found
te
out that
pueden brindar el espacio, pero pues
my
también
baby would
tenemos
come with me and there was space for one more caretaker. Sometimes the budget is too small for me to bring along someone else, but the project actually considers space for one more person. But we understand that there is this also a financial support that can enable this additional person to come. So this is a milestone. I've never seen this in other projects and other programs. I'm always thankful for you building this bridge in order for me not to miss this opportunity. I'm replicating this information as much as I can because this is a really useful tool. And I'm also replicating this wonderful management that you had for this project in order for it to be used in other projects. Despite me being a young breastfeeding mom, I'm able to participate in these spaces and my equal participation is guaranteed. So I'm really thankful to you. And hopefully this information will reach many more projects so that it can be implemented and to bring many more women into spaces for participation.
And and Lara, I mean, you've taken a really huge lead on that piece of the program, and you've also really helped us lead the process on being very intentional programmatically about efforts to support the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of all the participants in our project. You know, post conflict situations, there's a lot of mental health challenges, both for our participants and for folks in the communities having experienced so much of the trauma that they have. And then just to kind of have those conversations about what's happening in community can also be quite intense. Can you just speak a little bit about some of the practices that we've implemented to thinking about those sort of mental and well-being aspects for folks in this particular project?
Yes, so I really want to highlight that I think one of our main priorities was the well-being and is the well-being of our participants. And we acknowledge that many of them live in conflict-affected areas where having a visibility comes with a risk. I think it's no secret that in Colombia, being a social leader can be very dangerous. And therefore, we wanted to create like a security protocol to ensure the safety of all of our participants. But I think our approach was also participatory in the sense that we wanted to create it with them, as they know their regions and the territory and their needs much better than we do. So we wanted to be able to include mitigation and contingency plans and offer support, but do it with them. So we agreed on like good practices to track their safety and security. And we also decided to have like an emergency fund in case any urgent matter might put any of our participants at risk. So they could access this fund and if it was necessary, maybe leave the region, for example, while everything calmed down. Thankfully, we have not encountered any security emergency to this date, but this protocol has allowed us to have like a clear path to action in case anything did happen. And I think they have felt supported by us as well throughout the process. And in terms of mental health, we also wanted to support them, and we try to do this in like two ways. The first one was to give them tools in case of any of the research maybe could open like emotional emergencies, as many of the subjects could be a little sensitive. So maybe for some people, talk about leaving their regions, leaving their families could be something difficult to talk about. So we prepared a workshop on how to respond to an emotional crisis that could give them tools to handle any situation like this. And secondly, we also wanted to highlight their own mental health. So obviously being a peace builder is a difficult job anywhere, and more so in countries where conflict is still alive, like Colombia. So we wanted to talk about how the workload, listening or living traumatic issues can be difficult. And we started creating like wellness sessions where we talked about these issues, maybe like empathetic fatigue, self-care, where we shared tools that we can use to support each other. And within these sessions, we also shared the possibility of receiving a psychologist session. When it was like a call and invitation for all participants to know that this was available for them if they ever wanted to use it, whether it was like work related or personal. So that's kind of our approach to make sure that their wellness is always considered throughout the project.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I mean, you know, just really sort of giving some substance to the idea of do no harm. I think a lot of people talk about that, but it's I think the work that you've helped to develop in association with this project, I think, has given a lot of substance to what that actually means and how we're able to give resources to folks when things do become challenging. I think it's been very well received by the participants throughout, and hoping that we can communicate about it and have it brought to other projects in the future, certainly at USIP and more broadly as well. Um, so just last couple of questions. We have a few minutes left. I want to kind of point us forward. We've got another year, 15 months in this project. But for you, Leidy, you're about to enter into the second year facilitating, convening young people in Suacha. Can you speak to what you'll be doing in year two and what your hopes are for this part of the project for you personally and for your community?
Sí, para este segundo año,
For
estoy muy
this year two,
resultado del primer año. Ya
I'm
estoy
proud
trabajando
to
con
say
jóvenes
that
con la alcaldía.
working on youth-related projects with the mayor's office, thanks to the year one efforts. So I think the call for participation will be very successful in convening these young people. So now that these bridges of trust have been built, we hope this reaches even more people. We have increasingly more support. So for year two, we are already working on convening young people for their training. And I'm hoping to design projects incorporating the recommendations and to contribute, maybe not to solve a problem because it might be more complex, but to somehow make the difference in terms of migration in my territory.
Fantastic. Just last question for today, and just kind of pulling way back, getting beyond just the idea of a project, because a project comes to an end. But where do you see this work leading for both of you in the future? After this project piece is over, what do you see as the long-term value in doing this work? What groundwork is being laid that you think will be impactful in the future for you at the personal level or organizational level or community level? Like, what do you hope will be achieved going forward from having been a part of this work? Lara, do you want to start first?
Yes, okay. I think firstly, to me, it has been very gratifying and emotional, like to actually see the change in our participants. I think using PAR has really affected them in a very positive way. I think there's some that have like received recognition from like elder leaders of their communities. So I think seeing this has been very valuable to me. I think PAR is a tool that is definitely very helpful and useful and should be more integrated into programming. So I would like to be able to continue to integrate this method in the work that I do. I think it would also be really interesting to continue learning about PAR. I know we have like some techniques and some methodologies that we've used, but there is so much more that I think we can learn and continue doing. So to me, it's like an opportunity to continue growing and learning in my professional career.
You, Leidy?
Sí, en mi caso ya la
In my
organización
case,
conoce investigación
the organization
que desconocían,
now
entonces
knows PAR,
un gran
and they didn't before.
conocimiento alrededor de esta y sé que si yo me
There's
voy de la organización,
some
pues ya
knowledge about
conocen
it.
esta
So if
metodología
I ever
para
leave the
poder implementar
organization,
estos
they
programas
have this methodology
y
and they
quisiera como
can implement it into their
semillita para seguir
programs. So
participando
there's a
en
seed
todos estos
planted
programas. También a nivel
for all of
personal
our
me ha servido
programs. At the
mucho,
personal
me ha
level,
ayudado.
it has been really
Me ha
useful.
mostrado unas habilidades que pensé que no
It's
tenía,
something that's
entonces
shown me some
así
skills that I didn't know
en
I
otros
had in me. So
roles,
I'm
en
seeing
otro
myself in different
capacitador,
roles
ver
as a
que si van
researcher,
teniendo incidencias,
seeing the impact this research is having.
más.
So now I know that I can have a higher impact in my territory and maybe in my country and abroad. So this is something that I hope to keep cultivating and incorporating into other spaces. Even if the project ends, I want to continue to work as an educator and disseminate this further.
All right. Well, let me just say thank you, Laura. Thank you, Leidy, for spending your afternoon on the podcast today. Really enjoyed getting to have this conversation with you, and I'm just delighted that I get to spend another year working with both of you on this project, and then we'll be able to even maybe do this again a year from now and talk about what things have happened in the second part of this process. But again, thank you for today. Really appreciated it. And also just want to say thank you to a face that you can't see on the screen, whose voice that you're hearing if you're listening to this, who's doing the translation, Lara Costa, who's also been an integral part of this program for the past year. So thank you, Lara, for being here today and helping us with the translation for the recording. Also, just want to quickly thank our AR Plus team, Hillary, Carol, Ruth. Thank you all for the work that you do on the podcast for Yes and of course, thank you to everybody who's out there listening to this, who's wanting to learn more about action research and participatory research. If you have more questions about this particular project, we'll have some links on the page that you can click through. And of course, feel free to always reach out and email me with any questions you have, certainly since I have pretty good contacts on this particular project and can connect you with the really important people who do the work. So thanks everybody for tuning today, and I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you next time on the SN podcast with AR Plus. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Until next time. Ciao.